Hey there, mamas. Welcome back to Fun Rich Mom. I am Mitch Blackford. It's me and my cat Shifu. We're hanging out today in my room and we are talking to Lindsay Sharma. So let me break down what we're going to get into. Have you ever talked to someone before and they said, if you ever want to create real wealth, you need to get into real estate? And the first thought that goes into your mind is, I don't even have the money or the know-how to even approach that in my life. And then you pass by all the properties, you watch the HGTV shows, you hear about the people, you see the ugly houses for sale sign, or we buy ugly houses, all that stuff. And you just kind of dream like, wouldn't it be nice? Well, Lindsay actually went out and did it. She broke down her formula of what she did to get into real estate wholesale. So she buys homes at wholesale, sells them to investors that are going to flip them and take them over. And then she also does rental properties. But what's really cool is not only is she sharing that strategy with us today, which you're going to want to listen to what she did, what her process was, and most importantly, the learning that she had to do to get there. But she also brings up a few other strategies that you can get into real estate that maybe you haven't even heard of, and it might make it more accessible to you. So with that, let's get ready to get our wealth caps thinking and let's get started. Welcome, Lindsay. How are you doing today?
I'm doing very well besides the seasonal allergies that I'm dealing with, but I think we all experience that sometimes.
Definitely. I know. I'm like the queen of snot. It sounds horrible, but it's true. I like constant tissue, so I'm amazed that it's not going today. So I feel your pain, I empathize, and hopefully this goes away quickly for you, but I got you there. So tell us a little bit about you. I'd love for people to find out like who you are as a person before we get into real estate and all of the fun things that you're doing there.
Yeah, so like many people on the show, I'm a mom. I have three children, ages 5 and under. I have two boys and a girl, and I'm also married. My husband is an immigrant from India, so we have, a very mixed cultural family. We live in Central Florida. We just moved to Central Florida summer of last year. Before that, we were living in Little Rock. We lived there for 10 years. And I have a real estate investing business. So what I do is I wholesale real estate. I also have a portfolio of properties that I buy and hold as sort of a long-term wealth building strategy. And my whole business operates in Little Rock, even though I'm living in Florida.
Now, was that a culture shock to go from Little Rock to Florida, or is it pretty similar where you're at?
So it's Florida has more of the southern culture than I had expected. But there are a lot of people here from other parts of the United States. There's tons of people from the Northeast, New York, New Jersey. And then the population demographic is, of course, a lot of older folks, retired people. So it's a pretty interesting mix, but definitely a more mature crowd. And the biggest culture shock, I think, were the golf carts. People drive golf carts as if they're vehicles. You'll see them in the shopping complexes. People drive them. The house that we bought, I thought it was a 3-car garage, but it's really a 2-car garage, and one space is for the golf cart. They literally call it the golf cart garage. So it's pretty funny. Yeah.
So have you ever like been behind a golf cart on the street, just like, come on, you can't even do the speed limit?
Yes. And I'm like, well, how is this legal? People are just driving these everywhere. It's very bizarre, but, and then like when we took our kids trick or treating in the neighborhood, and there were a handful of people on golf carts, taking their kids trick or treating. People dress up their golf carts, they had lights on them, things like that. So it's a whole thing.
Oh, that's cool. So eventually you're going to have to join the golf cart mafia.
I know. I've already, it's inevitable someday. Yeah.
That's fun. And then, so before we move into the real estate, I'm also so curious about, okay, so how do you mix your two cultures? What does that look like at home for you?
Yeah, so there's really never a dull moment there. The interesting thing is my husband's the only person in his family that lives in the United States. Everyone else is still in India, and he actually FaceTimes his family every single morning.
Oh,
And
that's really cool.
yeah, talks to his mom. So his mom, um, his brother, and his niece, they all live together. So it's still kind of that multi-generational living. So um, it can be challenging at times. Sometimes when I'm disagreeing with my husband on something, it's like, is this your culture or your personality? Which one is really playing here? And I find myself asking that. But it's also fun because we have more holidays to celebrate. My husband is Hindu. I would consider myself non-religious, spiritual, non-religious. And we celebrate Diwali, which is one of the biggest holidays. And I guess you would say it's pretty equivalent to Christmas. Um, so that's kind of one of the extra holidays we celebrate. And I would say, he's trying to teach our kids Hindi. I don't really speak Hindi. I know a little bit. Um, but he's trying to immerse them as they're young.
Yeah.
But it can be a little hard for him because everyone speaks English in our home.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's a lot of, I think it makes our family a lot more interesting. It can be challenging sometimes, but I'm a curious person. I love learning about other cultures and um, that sort of thing. So I think it's fun.
Nice. Now, do you know at least how to say I love you in Hindi?
Mm. Oh my goodness. I don't think I do.
Okay, I just gave you the phrase that you need to learn with your husband, and then you're set, right?
Yes. Yes.
That's funny.
Yeah.
So, now how did you get into real estate? And can you explain a little bit about what it is that you're doing?
Yeah. So I was fortunate enough to go to college and I have a degree in graphic design. I've always been a very right brain, creative. I love writing, designing. I'm a true introvert. I can never get too much alone time.
Mm,
But I graduated in 2007, and we know the financial crisis hit in 2008. The economy kind of tanked, and I grew up in the Midwest. I grew up in Northwest Ohio, and as I was growing up, I sort of saw the collapse of the auto industry really affect families. It's the very blue collar area I grew up in, and it kind of, I guess, molded my idea of money and the kind of life I wanted to live. I just always wanted to have more than enough financially. And I also wanted financial freedom. I did a lot of job hopping in my 20s because the economy was so bad. And I always freelanced as a designer on the side because I had a really hard time getting a job as a designer. Um, and so I kind of learned that like I don't really like being an employee. I felt exploited almost every place I ever worked. And then I just kind of threw in the towel and said, I'm just going to start my own business as a designer. We'll see how it goes. I did that for a few years. I did everything wrong because I treated it more like a job. Like I owned a job for myself as opposed to treating it
right.
like a business with systems, processes, budgets, all of that. So I did okay, but I did struggle a lot. And at that time, I started working on my financial education. I was reading personal finance books, wealth books, mindset books, and I kind of started to come across real estate investing as a good way to build wealth. So I started learning about it, reading several books, listening to podcasts, and I did that for a few years. And I knew that I wanted to invest in real estate, just didn't know how to get started. I was scared. I didn't have any money. I thought you needed money to invest in real estate, which is not true. Um, Contrary to what a lot of people would think. So what I did, I was single at the time. I didn't really have a lot of extra money, so I thought, why don't I see if I can get a job working for somebody who's already doing this, so that I can learn the ropes. And that's exactly what I did. I just so happened to find a real estate investor in my local area who was hiring. He was hiring an executive assistant, which is something I have never done in my life. Didn't have any experience, but I somehow sold myself to him. And I worked for him for 3 years, really tried to add a lot of value to his company in that time.
Mm.
And he mentored me, and I actually bought my first investment property while I was working for him. And then when I was pregnant with my third child, I was kind of at the point where um, I was like, do I come back after maternity leave or do I just start my own business? And I was leaning heavily towards starting my own business. I had already started working on some things beforehand. So that's exactly what I did. And so I've been a full-time real estate investor for a little over a year now.
And then did you ever get your real estate license as well? Is that something that worked in there or not
No,
necessary?
yeah, I don't have my license. You can actually buy and sell real estate without a license. The laws are different from state to state, but the state I'm operating in is not required. I may get it eventually. I'm not sure. There's a lot of, for what I do, I buy distressed properties and I resell them for a profit. And I market directly to sellers. So I just really don't have a need for an agent. And the agents I have worked with, they overcomplicate everything for what my business model is doing. So I just don't really
Mm.
see a whole lot of need for me to really be licensed. I think the biggest benefit if I were to get licensed is just access to the MLS. So,
Right. So then you
mhm.
mentioned that basically there's a myth that you need to have a lot of money to start up in real estate investing. So can you go a little
Mhm.
bit more into that? Like what if someone was looking at this and saying, okay, I'm kind of in the same boat. I want to create financial wealth and freedom. I know real estate is a good market to get in, but I don't have the extra money. How do I actually do that? What would you say to them? How did you get that money flowing?
Yeah. So, what I do, the main part of my business model is called wholesaling. What I
Mm-hmm.
do is I find people with distressed properties. A distressed property is usually a property that needs repairs done. Maybe it needs a new roof. Maybe it needs cosmetic updates. Maybe it has some structural issues. And these people a lot of times will sell their property below market value just to get it off their hands. Maybe they don't have the money to put the repairs in because a lot of times when you list on the market with a realtor, they're going to say you have to fix this, this, and this before you sell it, or a buyer may say you need to fix this, this, and this. And additionally, a bank is not going to approve a loan for a home that's in
Mm.
disrepair. So that kind of creates an opportunity for people like me. I can get the property under contract, and I actually don't bring my own money to the table to close on the property. What I do is I sell my contract, I sell my rights to purchase that property to the end buyer. The end buyer is usually a cash buyer, investor, either a landlord or fix and flip investor. And so I don't have to use any of my own money. They're the ones bringing the money to the table, and I charge a fee for that. I charge what's called an assignment fee. So I'm kind of like a middleman, basically. But I'm running a business, so I do have to invest a lot of money into marketing. I'm sending out postcards, thousands of postcards every month to reach these sellers. I'm buying specific targeted lists. So um, yes, you could start investing in real estate and get properties under contract without any money, but you're going to spend a lot of time. So I don't want to mislead anybody. However, there's a lot of different ways that you can invest in real estate that people don't really know about. One way could be as a private lender. Um, a private lender is somebody who loans out the money they have to an investor. The investor might buy a property, they might use it for short term capital, whatever, and they're going to pay you back with interest. And a lot of times that can be a lot safer than the stock market because you're going to get that money back and you don't lose money like the volatility of the stock market. So that's one way to do it. You can have different amounts of money that you're willing to put up. And different investors, have different thresholds. So that's one way to do it. You can partner with people. There's real estate investment funds that are called syndications. And so again, maybe you have 10, 15, $20,000 that you want to invest in real estate instead of the stock market. You could partner up with some people in a syndication and do it that way. And these people pool all their money together and invest in larger properties like apartment complexes, things like that. So there's just a lot of different avenues that I think the average person who doesn't work in this industry even aware of.
Yeah. And then what was the process like? So for in the instance in the beginning, when obviously you were working for a realtor, so maybe it was a little different than maybe say our average mom who has no real estate industry experience or connections. And you're saying they're spending a lot of time. Is that like, okay, we're going to be literally targeting a neighborhood, knocking on doors saying, hey, do you want to sell your house? Hey, do you want to sell your house? Is that kind of what they're looking at doing, is just lots of legwork until they can get to that marketing budget where they're buying the lists?
Yes.
And
Yes, exactly. Um, but I would say to anyone, if you want to invest in real estate and you don't want to learn the business, you don't want to run the business, you don't want to become a real estate entrepreneur, what I would suggest doing is meet people who are real estate investors. And you can join Facebook groups. Usually every market has a real estate investors association. It's called a REIA, REIA. And they have monthly meetings or they have virtual meetings, and you can just go to them and network and meet local investors in your market. And that's how you can kind of start those relationships and get started in any way that you're kind of looking to get involved.
wow, that's really cool. And then when you finally got going and you took the leap to do your own business, baby number 3 was on the way. You're like, okay, I'm done. I've got one, at this time, I guess, just one house under your belt. How long did it take for you to get to a place where you went, okay, I can breathe. This is steady. I don't need to stress out anymore.
That's a good question. So I've been in business a year. I have a full-time salesperson who works for me. He mainly gets all of the properties under contract, talks to the sellers, that sort of thing. And he's actually a licensed realtor. I mean, he doesn't have to be, but he just has a lot of experience. And then I have a marketing assistant and a full-time assistant. So I have a small team. And so to answer your question, I would say I'm still not quite there where I can breathe. I still have issues with cash flow every single month. But again, I've only been in business a year. So I think that's the reality for a lot of businesses is you kind of go through some growth, some turbulence in the beginning, especially when you just don't really have the capital to hire a bunch of people and scale and all of that. Um, so the tough thing about real estate is it can be very seasonal. A lot of people don't sell houses in the winter. The busiest times are going to be spring and summer. So that affects us too. We're still spending money on marketing, paying for the people we have, but we're maybe not closing deals, which is where we get our revenue from. So that's something that you have to plan for and account for. So it can be quite challenging.
Yeah, that's a big team for just a year already. Like it's 4 people that your business is already covering. So that to me is pretty impressive. What would you say is like your favorite part of the whole process, though?
I would say I love connecting with people, even though I'm an introvert and I'm not the salesperson. I have no business being the salesperson. I knew that early on, and that was the first position I hired for. I do talk to a lot of other investors. I love hearing people's stories, how they got involved in real estate. And one thing I find about a lot of people in this space is that a lot of them are very into personal development and personal growth, which is really what brought me to this industry because, I read all the mindset books, I do the morning routines and all of that stuff. So it's just really interesting that is kind of common thought in this industry. And kind of makes it unique because it's difficult. And if it weren't difficult, everybody would be doing it. But at the same time, there's a lot of reward, a lot of financial reward if you're willing to do the work, take the risk, and go through the difficult times because there are definitely some difficult times. And there's times when I'm like, there's times when I've asked myself, isn't there an easier way to make money?
Yes.
But the answer is probably yes, but it's just sort of what you have to deal with, I think, when you're running a business.
Yeah. And I don't think it matters whatever you're doing, whatever way that you're bringing in income, there's always going to be the reward, and there's always going to be what you're going to have to pay to get that reward, right? And it
Mm-hmm.
depends on what your risk tolerance is, I'm sure, and what work you're willing to put in or what time you're willing to give up. And if you feel like, okay, the benefits outweigh what I'm having to put in or not. So yeah, I love that. It is scary. It is rewarding and challenging to start a business. What are some of the favorite books that you read in real estate that really you feel gave you the edge or that prompted you and made you feel comfortable with making that step?
Yeah, so one of the first books I read is called Rich Dad Poor Dad, and there are
Mm.
some problematic things with that book. I won't go into that, but the concepts are really what changed my mindset because it teaches you how to basically low income people are really taught to own liabilities. So, like your car, and to work a job, whereas wealthy people own assets. An asset is like real estate, businesses, income generating things. And so that really shifted my mindset that there's, different ways to approach life and think about things. Um, and now I spend a lot of my time accumulating assets. So I buy properties for my portfolio that I receive rent on. Um, and that's kind of the end goal is just to have a large enough portfolio that I don't have to actively work. I can just live off of the income from that. Um, Another book was also The Debt Millionaire, which taught me that it's okay to get leverage and funding. A lot of personal finance gurus will teach you debt is bad. Dave Ramsey, Susie Orman. But where I think personal, like credit card debt, can be bad, business debt is completely different, and that's how wealthy people make money is they get loans. They get loans to buy businesses, to buy property. Your cash, yes, it's great to own things free and clear, but we only have so much cash, so that you can only utilize that money up to a certain point, right? So if you want to
Mm-hmm.
continue to grow, most times you need to get funding from a bank. And so that book made me really comfortable doing that. Another book would be We Should All Be Millionaires by Rachel Rogers. That's a great book for women. It really kicks you in the butt and motivates you, and it helps with a lot of the mindset and imposter syndrome that women have, and also the messages that women receive around money, um, and things that maybe we're unconscious or conscious of. So that's just a really great book. Loved it.
Nice. I love that list. And I like the Debt Millionaire and We Shall Be Millionaire. I like that title. I agree with it. So can you walk me through, I would say an average day, but I know that an average day is going to be different from day to day, but what's an average week like for you as a mom with 3 kids under 5, running a business, having employees, being married, now in a new state, and still building this business? What's that like for you?
Yeah. I love this question because I'm always so interested in sort of a slice of someone's life, because I just
Mm-hmm.
think that's so interesting. So, um, yes, my days are different. I'm working on different things a lot, but there's a lot of main things that happen every single day. And I have a very structured routine life. I think a lot of people with young kids do, or a lot of people with kids in general. You just have to because that's how kids sometimes are best raised. But so typically, what my day looks like is I usually wake up around 6. My husband and I try to eat breakfast together before the kids wake up because we don't get to eat dinner together.
Mm.
He's responsible for the morning routine. So he gets the kids up, feeds them breakfast, gets them dressed. I get myself ready. A lot of times while I'm getting ready, I'm listening to podcasts, books, motivational type stuff. Sometimes it might be a hypnosis to help with my mindset and kind of getting rid of some of those self-sabotaging beliefs. So I'm really interested in subconscious mind stuff. So I do that in the morning. He drops the kids off at daycare. And then after that, I usually walk my dog for about 30 minutes, and I try to use that time for like thinking, reflecting, connecting with God. And then I'll come back to my home office, and usually I might read a little bit, journal. kind of set my day up. I like to spend time writing things I'm grateful for and just trying to get into a really positive mindset. And then from there, I'm usually checking emails. I usually have some tasks regarding properties in my portfolio or any maybe properties we recently got under contract to sell. Um, Communicating with my staff, they always have a lot of questions and things that they need help with. I do spend a lot of time. So I have a couple of coaches. I have a business coach. I have a more like a life, what do you call that? Life coach, I guess. She helps me with like spiritual and kind of emotional stuff. And then I have a fractional CFO who is also like a coach. He coaches me and helps me with the numbers in my business, like making sense of my financial data and making financial decisions, basically. So I spend a lot of time on coaching calls, I think, and also try to spend some time each week working on the business, looking at the operations, looking at the numbers, what can we do better, what's not working, what is working, measuring KPIs, how are we performing.
What is KPI?
So that's, oh, I'm sorry, key performance indicators.
Okay.
So metrics, yeah. And then, so I'm pretty much working from about 10 a.m. till about 3 p.m. And then I go to the gym, usually from 3:30 to about 5 o'clock. I have a personal trainer that I meet with 3 times a week, which really helps me hold me accountable to going, actually showing up at
Yes.
the gym. And then she also does all of my workouts for me. So that's one less thing I have to think about and plan for, which I've found is just so helpful. And then after the gym, I pick up my kids from daycare. We come home. I'm in charge of the night routine. So I'll feed them dinner, feed myself dinner, play with them for a little bit. Then we do bath time. We try to do story time. Sometimes my kids are interested, sometimes not. And then pretty much get them down, for the night.
Cool. That's nice. You've got a lot of time that you're able to dedicate on really getting your mindset in the right space. And was it like that when you first started, or was your time a lot more into, I got to beat the streets, or, what's the difference between now and when you started?
When I first started, I kind of had the mindset that I had to be busy, 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 go, go, go on the business. Like every minute had to be productive, quote unquote productive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But as I started working with coaches, I learned that there's smarter ways to do things. And the more that you are centered and kind of taking care of yourself, the better you perform. And it's not about the hours you're putting in. It's about, am I working on the right things? And am I making decisions from a peaceful place? Because before I was kind of doing everything in a reactive way, and I was letting my stress, my anxiety, kind of allow me to not always make the best decisions because I felt like I had to move so quickly. And now that I've spent more time on my morning routine, my spirituality, I've learned to really slow down and take some time before making decisions. And that's made a huge, huge difference.
That's good to know. So for someone who's watching this episode and you've piqued their curiosity and they're like, ooh, okay, you've answered some of my questions. What would you say first 3 steps to send them on their way?
So if they wanted to get started in real estate investing, is that the question?
Yeah.
Okay. First thing I would say, work on your education. I would not jump into real estate investing all willy-nilly. You want to learn some foundational things first. So maybe go to biggerpockets.com. That's a great resource. They have tons of books. They have forums. They have several podcasts. It's a great resource. Second, I would say start meeting people who are actively investing in real estate. Just talk to them, get to know them, find out about their lives and what brought them into real estate investing. And one thing about real estate investors I've learned is that most are very happy to share resources, knowledge, time, because they know what it was like being a beginner and how difficult it is. So, meet other people. And then the third thing I would say is just set big goals and take action as fast as you can. Because, like, one thing I did is I spent maybe 3 or 4 years just learning. I was kind of in that analysis paralysis. I wish I would have got started sooner, because if I got started sooner, I would probably have more properties, I would be further ahead than where I am now. But I was so afraid to start.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's probably a common thing for most people, myself included, even with this podcast. It took me forever to get this started and I could have been so much further ahead. So I feel you there. Definitely. So when you said go meet investors, would you suggest that they're going to the Facebook group, like the RIA Facebook group, or like how are they meeting these people and how do they meet the flippers to sell those investment properties too?
Yeah, same thing. You can go to the local RIA, meetups. A lot of people host meetups for investors, and also the Facebook groups. And there's a lot of these groups have subgroups specifically for women. So if you're more comfortable in that type of environment, there's definitely groups for all women. So they're out there. You just have to look in the right places.
Awesome. Thank you. That was really informative. I'm like, check, check, check. Okay. All the questions that we all have about real estate. And, you said it's scary in the beginning and it does take a lot of work. And I'm glad that you mentioned that, because I think sometimes we have the microwave mentality today because there are so many things that we're so used to coming to us so quickly. Like I want something, I ordered on Amazon. It's there by tomorrow at the latest, or maybe a couple of days, or whatever it is. We kind of put that expectation on everything. If it's broke, it should be fixed by now. If I haven't lost 10 pounds in a week, then it's not working. Or if I didn't make $1 million in my first year, then I failed at this. And that's not the case. There's a time investment and there's that learning curve. And it's putting in those steps and kind of taking those hard knocks where you actually get those sharper thoughts, those methods where it's like, okay, this is how I succeed now. And so thanks for sharing that and just being very open and real about what it takes versus like our HGTV model of real estate, right?
Yeah. And I actually have, speaking on that idea of instant gratification, I actually have a learning experience that I can share really quickly about that if we have time.
Yeah.
So I told you I worked for an investor for 3 years. So I was inside of his business. I was his assistant. I was inside his bank accounts. I saw how everything worked, every component of the business. And I thought because I did that, I had a huge, advantage, a blueprint, basically. I thought I had this blueprint to get my business started and that I could just come out the gate going 100%. And some of that is true. Yes, I had a lot of knowledge that really helped me start my business. But the problem was I scaled too quickly. I spent too much money on marketing. I hired the wrong people initially. I bought too many properties too quickly. And what happened was I was not being profitable. I was losing money. I wasn't focusing on my profit. And then I was speaking to one of my coaches and it occurred to me that, and I was kind of beating myself up over it. I'm like, I have all this knowledge. I have this experience. I know what needs to be done. I'm putting these things in place. So why isn't this working out? And then one of my coaches made me realize, well, the guy I was working for, he worked on his business for 11 years to get to where he was. I had only been in business like 6 months. So it just didn't equate in my mind that, yes, you see someone else's success and you think, why not me? Or I can do it too. But part of it is just putting in the time and the experience. And that takes patience, a lot of patience.
Exactly. Love it. That, I think, is a great place to wrap this up because I love that message to send people off is just remember patience and experience. They're really the things that can be the difference maker in your life. And don't give up before you get to that prize. There's so many times we're like, this close. And we feel like, and so we give up. And if we would have just pushed a little further, then you see the results. So yeah, great story. Thanks for sharing that. Well, now can you tell people where to find you? So if they have more questions or just want to get a feel for how you'd run business, where can they go to find you?
I have a website called lindsay.sharmaproperties.com, and I'm also on Facebook, Lindsay Sharma.
So, well, thank you, Lindsay, for spending your time with us today and for sharing that great knowledge and just being so open to just, hey, here's how I did it. You can go and do it too. And I know that just myself listening to it, my ideas are going, I'm like, oh, I need to talk to my husband about this. But you just made it a little more accessible. And then you also reminded me that, hey, it's still scary even when you start up, even if you know someone, even if you've been in the industry. So if you've never been in the industry, that's okay to have that fear. It's probably a healthy fear. And to give it time. And then, of course, all of those resources that you mentioned, those books sound amazing. I want to go get my hands on those. So thank you so much for your time again and just for showing up and being you.
Thank you for having me. It was a lot of fun.
Cool. Awesome. All right. So with that, hopefully you guys got some really great strategies that you can implement from Lindsay. I love that she not only talked to us about the real estate investment sale, the wholesaling, but all of the different methods that real estate offers for you to get in and to start creating that generational wealth and have that portfolio where you get to the point in time where it's like, I've got money coming in no matter what. So I will put the books that she mentioned in the show notes because if you're like me, you were probably watching something or driving something or doing something while you're watching this podcast. And I really want you to get that information. So with that, I will leave you for this week. I look forward to talking to you next week. Make it fun, make it rich, and bye-bye.